Welcome to Zostories, the secret operation that turned me into a girl. Rain pattered softly against the windows of a sleek black sedan parked outside the government's covert operations facility. Inside, Liam Shaw sat alone, his mind racing as he clutched a thick file, labeled Top Secret. The streets beyond seemed distant, like an echo of the life he once knew. A life of clean-cut missions, hard choices, and deep cover operations that pushed him to his limits, but never blurred the lines of who he was. Until now. Today, he sat at the edge of an abyss, about to dive into a mission that would strip him of more than just his identity. He was about to become someone else, someone he never imagined he could be. What started as another assignment would soon spiral into something that would reshape not just his body, but his very soul. This was the story of how Liam Shaw became Leah Shaw, and how a mission meant to protect his country would challenge everything he believed about who he was. Liam sat in the cold, sterile briefing room, his pulse quickening as he read the file marked Top Secret. His boss, Director Hayes, was speaking, but her words barely registered over the sound of blood rushing in his ears. Operation Valkyrie, the mission that would change his life forever. He had infiltrated countless organizations, drug cartels, terrorist cells, crime syndicates. But this assignment was different. The syndicate wasn't like anything he had ever seen, and it would require a level of commitment far beyond deep cover. This mission is not for the faint-hearted, Liam, Director Hayes said, her voice cutting through his thoughts. The syndicate is an all-female criminal organization with tentacles that reach into every corner of global society. They have power, influence, and they are incredibly secretive. No man has ever come close to infiltrating them, until now. Liam raised an eyebrow. How do you expect me to do that if they only trust women? Hayes's lips curled into a cold smile. That's where this mission takes a different approach. You're going to become one of them. You're going to become a woman. Liam froze. He had gone deep undercover before, but this? Becoming a woman. The words echoed in his head, surreal and impossible. You can't be serious, he muttered, half laughing as if this were some kind of joke. I'm completely serious, Hayes replied, her eyes like steel. You will undergo a complete physical transformation. Hormones, surgeries, voice training. By the time we're done, no one will recognize you as Liam Shaw. You'll be Leah Shaw, the newest recruit in the syndicate's ranks. Liam stared at the file, flipping through photographs of the women who ran the syndicate, powerful, ruthless, and dangerous. He tried to imagine himself among them, tried to envision his life on the other side of this transformation. The idea seemed impossible. He had never thought of himself as anything other than the hard-edged, no-nonsense government agent he had always been, but the mission left him no choice. We have the resources to make this work, Hayes continued. We'll start with hormone therapy. After a few months, your body will begin to feminize. Surgery will take care of the rest. Facial reconstruction, breast augmentation, vocal cord alteration. You'll be trained in how to walk, talk, and behave as a woman. You'll live as one for months before you even get close to the syndicate. And what happens when the mission is over? Liam asked, his voice barely a whisper. Hayes leaned forward, her eyes cold. You do your job, Liam, and we'll deal with the consequences later. The following day, Liam found himself in a secret medical facility buried deep within the government's labyrinth of covert operations. He was quickly ushered into a private room where a team of doctors and specialists awaited him. They wasted no time. His body was scanned, measured, and analyzed, preparing him for the long process that lay ahead. Within hours, he was injected with estrogen. The first shot didn't feel like much, just a slight sting in his upper arm. But as the days passed, the effects began to manifest. His muscles softened, his face became rounder, and a strange sensation began to fill his chest. Over the next few weeks, his body started to change more drastically. His once sharp jawline smoothed out, his hips subtly widened, and his skin became softer to the touch. The most disconcerting change came when his chest began to swell, forming small but unmistakable breasts. Liam tried to ignore the mirror, but each time he caught a glimpse of his reflection, it was like staring at a stranger. His hair, which had been cut short for most of his adult life, was now growing longer, brushing against his shoulders. He looked nothing like the man he had been, and yet he was still only partway through the transformation. The psychological conditioning was relentless. Every day, he spent hours with a voice coach, learning to raise the pitch of his voice, to soften his speech, to speak as Leah would. His posture, his mannerisms, even the way he held a glass of water was scrutinized and corrected. They taught him how to move with grace, how to sway his hips in a way that felt foreign to him at first but slowly became second nature. The final surgeries were the hardest. Undergoing facial reconstruction felt like the ultimate surrender. He woke up after hours on the operating table, his face swollen and bandaged. The doctors assured him that the results would be stunning, but for now, he could only wait. 2 weeks later, when the bandages finally came off, he gasped at the reflection that greeted him. The person in the mirror wasn't just different, she was beautiful. Large, almond-shaped eyes, full lips, high cheekbones, and soft, feminine curves where once there had been only masculine angles. It was done. There was no more Liam Shaw. From that moment on, he was Leah. 6 months later, Leah Shaw stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her long auburn hair as she prepared for the syndicate's annual gala. She wore a tight black gown that clung to her new curves, the fabric shimmering under the soft lighting of the luxurious hotel suite where she was staying. Her makeup was flawless, dark smoky eyes, red lips, and just the right amount of contour to highlight her feminine features. The nerves that once gripped her in the early days of the transformation had faded. She had spent months living as a woman, moving through the world unnoticed as anything other than Leah. The government had arranged for her to build a backstory, complete with a fabricated identity as a successful entrepreneur. She was ready. At the gala, the room buzzed with wealth and power. Women in designer dresses and men in tailored suits mingled under crystal chandeliers. But this was no ordinary high society event. Beneath the glittering surface, dangerous deals were being made. The syndicate was everywhere, their influence cloaked in elegance and sophistication. Leah made her way through the crowd, catching eyes and turning heads as she went. She had one goal tonight: to get close to Valkyrie Kincaid, the syndicate's queen bee. Valkyrie was one of the most feared women in the criminal underworld. Ruthless, cunning, and utterly untouchable. But she was also Leah's target. When Leah finally approached Valkyrie, the air between them seemed to crackle with energy. Valkyrie was everything Leah had been trained to admire: stunning, confident, and terrifyingly powerful. Her blonde hair cascaded down her back in soft waves, and her piercing blue eyes seemed to see right through Leah's carefully constructed persona. "Leah Shaw, isn't it?" Valkyrie's voice was like velvet, smooth and dangerous. Leah smiled, playing her part perfectly. "The pleasure is mine, Miss Kincaid. I've heard so much about you." They spent the evening talking, their conversation light and flirtatious. Leah's heart raced, but not just because of the mission. There was something magnetic about Valkyrie, something that pulled her in. By the end of the night, Valkyrie invited her to one of the syndicate's private meetings. It was a victory, a major step toward gaining their trust. But as Leah left the gala, she couldn't shake a strange feeling. It wasn't just about the mission anymore. For the first time, she felt comfortable, at ease, as if she belonged in this world of high-stakes power and feminine allure. The lines between Liam and Leah were starting to blur, and it terrified her. The deeper Leah went into the syndicate, the more she began to lose sight of her original purpose. She started to thrive in this world, navigating the complex social dynamics of the criminal elite with ease. She wasn't just acting like one of them anymore. She was becoming one of them. Her relationship with Valkyrie grew more intense with each passing week. What had started as a professional seduction quickly turned into something more. Valkyrie was intoxicating. She exuded power and control in a way that Leia had never experienced before, and Leia found herself drawn to her, not just for the mission, but because she wanted to be near her. She wanted to be her. Leia's thoughts grew increasingly conflicted. She found herself enjoying the femininity she had once feared. She loved the softness of her new body, the way clothes clung to her curves, the way men and women alike looked at her with admiration and desire. The control she had over her own sexuality, the ability to manipulate others with a smile, a touch, it was intoxicating. It was power in a form Liam had never known. But the mission still loomed. She was supposed to take down the syndicate, to bring them all to justice. And yet, every day she spent with Valkyrie, every secret meeting, every whispered conversation, chipped away at her resolve. The day finally came when Leia's two worlds collided. Valkyrie had invited her to an exclusive gathering of the syndicate's inner circle, an event that could provide all the evidence needed to bring them down. The government had planted bugs. The operation was in motion. All Leia had to do was show up and play her part. But as she stood in front of the mirror, applying her makeup for what could be the last time, she felt a knot in her stomach. She wasn't sure if she could go through with it. Taking down the syndicate meant betraying Valkyrie, the woman who had trusted her, who had opened her world to her. It meant giving up the life she had come to enjoy, the life she had built as Leia. As she walked into the meeting, Valkyrie greeted her with a smile that sent a shiver down her spine. They talked, laughed, drank wine, but Leia's mind was elsewhere. The government was listening, waiting for her to give the signal. But when the time came, Leia hesitated. She looked at Valkyrie, saw the trust in her eyes, the connection they had built, and she couldn't do it. She couldn't betray her. Instead, she made a choice. She walked out. Leia Shaw disappeared that night. The government never found her, and neither did the syndicate. She had chosen a different path, a life outside of the mission, outside of the lies. She had embraced who she had become, not just for the mission, but for herself. Some say she's still out there, living under a new name, a new identity. Maybe she's still with Valkyrie, maybe not. But one thing is certain, Liam Shaw is gone. And Leia Shaw, she's finally free. Thank you for joining us on another captivating journey through Zoe's stories. Remember to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a tale. Until next time, keep exploring, keep imagining, and keep believing in the magic of storytelling. See you in the next chapter.